The tale starts with 16-year antique Juliet from the vampire-owned circle of relatives. She is sort of on the age in which she ought to make her first kill. Yet, she nevertheless takes blood drugs due to the fact she has now no longer hunted all and sundry herself. Since she has now no longer tasted actual blood, she isn't always taken into consideration a whole vampire. Her mom Margot is an effective vampire whilst her father Sebastian is human. Her sister Eleanor is formidable and lethal, and she or he lives proudly as a real vampire. Juliet desires to be like her. However, anxiety continually exists in the own circle of relatives due to the fact Juliet has now no longer demonstrated herself but at school, her nice pal Ben has been together along with her due to the fact that childhood. They as soon as dated, however, later they understood themselves better. Ben likes boys and Juliet likes girls. Yet, their friendship stayed strong. Juliet continues noticing a brand new female named Calliope. She desires to talk, but worry holds her back. Ben encourages Juliet to provoke a communique with Calliope so she will be able to get to recognize her. By chance, they encounter every different and after a few awkward words. Juliet invitations her to a celebration and Calliope is of the same opinion due to the fact that it's one in all her first days right here and she or he honestly desires to make a few friends. Later, Juliet touches a silver bracelet left at the ground and she or he right away feels a surprise and her hand burns badly due to the fact vampires cannot cope with silver. At home, her happiness fades as her own circle of relatives reminds her that without her first kill, she turns into a chance to everyone. Now, the hassle is clear. Juliet has to take a person's life. She has to kill. However, deep interior she has very smooth emotions for humans. She does now no longer just like the concept of wounding them and he or she honestly does now no longer revel in violence. Because of that, she has in no way killed every person and he or she has in no way tasted actual blood. So, she nonetheless does now no longer deliver the proper vampire mark and her own circle of relatives maintains getting irritated at her. Then, Eleanor steps in and says, it is exceptional on account that Juliet goes to a celebration tonight, so she can be able to assist her get ready. Their mom tells Eleanor to provide an explanation for the whole thing properly. So, Eleanor retired Juliet up and maintains sharing tales approximately her very own first kill. At the equal time, she notices Juliet smiling and he or she is familiar with there may be a lady involved. Juliet admits she likes Calliope, despite the fact that she does now no longer need to kill her. Still, Eleanor maintains pronouncing as soon as she makes her first kill, all her starvation and ache will calm down. At the birthday celebration, Juliet is going with Ben. People are dancing and drinking. However, Juliet's simplest seems for Calliope. Soon, they play a spin the bottle game, and via way of means of chance, the bottle lands on Juliet and Calliope. They take a shot and stroll away together. One issue ends in every other in that they kiss. They get near and with inside the warmness of the moment, Juliet's fangs pop out and he or she bites Calliope. Suddenly, the twist hits. Calliope pulls out a dagger and kills Juliet. Then we see Calliope's side. She is new on the town and her own circle of relatives protects her a lot. They belong to a vampire hunter-owned circle of relatives. Her dad and mom and brothers Apollo and Theo all teach to kill monsters. They pass from metropolis to metropolis and comply with strict rules. At a graveyard mission, Kali fails to make her first kill due to the fact she receives scared and her B attempted to kill Juliet. Meanwhile, Juliet dropped to the floor with a dagger nonetheless caught in her whilst Calliope slipped far from the birthday celebration as police flooded the place. She slightly controlled to cover and escape. And on the equal time, the lighting interior all of sudden went out, so chaos unfolds speedy. When the lighting got here back, Ben observed a frame proper at his feet. It became a female with a brutal head injury, and her liver became long gone and blood protected the floor. A ordinary female stood close by with a creepy smile, and before Ben should react, she vanished. Meanwhile, Kali concealed interior a bus and checked herself for marks. However, the entirety appeared every day as though not anything had happened. Back at Calliope's house, ordinary noises echoed via the halls. So, her mom, Talia, grabbed a dagger and Apollo and Theo followed. They observed a monster interior and attacked without hesitation, thinking the way it were given beyond their security. At the equal time, Juliet became nonetheless alive with inside the center of her very own mess. Even with a dagger in her chest. She saved going, then slowly pulled it out and healed Speedy whilst police swarmed outside, so she selected to live hidden. Later, Calliope had a nightmare wherein her mom advised her to seek a monster. However, the monster became her very own mom and panic hit instantly. Elsewhere, Eleanor visited the sanatorium to test the murdered female and determined lacking organs plus a head wound. Then, she used her energy and wiped the doctor's reminiscence so he could overlook the female became nonetheless alive after the attack. Soon, Kali's mom tested her abilities via way of means of asking her to copy the flow she as soon as used on a vampire. Calliope pulled it off without hurting her mother, and this proved her manage even as additionally confirming that the vampire she killed earlier then changed into one of a kind, which defined YT. Feels one of a kind from different monsters and by hook or by crook greater human. Then suddenly, a snake seems close to Juliet, and the temper shifts fast. Juliet grabs her sword and tells Kali to run and store herself. And proper then, Colette wakes up at domestic. Back in reality, the residence feels irritating due to the fact everybody is training. Apollo and Theo maintain sparring over and over even as the own circle of relatives watches closely. Apollo maintains winning. However, no one praises him given that he precipitated hassle via way of means of stealing a monster item earlier then. So now Theo is selected for destiny missions even as Apollo stands at the facet and takes the hit quietly. Soon a cousin joins and the sparring keeps and the entire location seems like stress constructing slowly. Meanwhile, Juliet searches the residence in panic due to the fact she can't locate her capsules and she or he has now no longer taken blood in days. Her palms shake and her mind spiral given that her first kill nevertheless has now no longer happened. She rushes into the kitchen and unearths Eleanor, then begs her for the capsules. Eleanor remains bloodless and reminds her that without her first kill, she cannot in reality belong. Juliet offers in and takes the pills, and Eleanor warns her now no longer to copy Oliver's mistakes, however rather flow clever and survive. Soon, the own circle of relatives prepares for a massive birthday party supposed for Juliet's first kill. However, Juliet feels a long way from ready. They strive get dressed, but not anything feels proper till the grandmother walks in. She is the extended family leader, so her presence by myself shifts the air. She appears proud but involved due to the fact Juliet feels too human in comparison to others. Juliet slips outdoor to fulfill ban, which annoys the grandmother. However, Eleanor guarantees she can be able to maintain a watch on her all through the ritual. Outside, Ban and Juliet argue considering she refuses to sign up for his investigation. At the equal time, every other typhoon brews at Calliope's domestic wherein Talia argues together along with her husband. She refuses to allow Calliope be part of missions due to the fact she nonetheless sees her as a child. And after a protracted again and forth, he in the end has the same opinion to maintain Calliope secure for now. Later, Juliet researches old books and prepares for the ritual. And Eleanor leads her to a lady selected as her target. However, Juliet cannot do it due to the fact her bond with Kali continues pulling her again. Eleanor explains their legacy and the way generations constructed this vampire line even as mixing with humans. Yet, Juliet nonetheless struggles. The own circle of relatives reminds her that she already has presence like on foot in daylight and residing near humans, so she have to take delivery of what she is. Juliet nonetheless hesitates, so Eleanor sends the lady away with cash and tells her to return later. Meanwhile, Calliope's own circle of relatives gathers for a big strike considering many vampire tribes will unite soon. The plan feels massive and dangerous. Then, the whole lot flips while her father learns that Calliope would possibly refuse to fight. He exhibits what he heard and surprise spreads throughout the room. Talia confronts her even as Kali realizes a person twisted the truth. She loses belief in her sister and attempts to give an explanation for she continues to be loyal. However, doubt spreads and no one listens. Elsewhere, Juliet grows weaker from pressure, so Elena fingers her a complete glass of blood and tells her to drink slowly. The warm temperature steadies her, however the worry remains. The rite begins, and Juliet hesitates till Oliver's burn through vampire senses, so panic spreads instantly. Calliope tells Juliet to run and survive. And similar to that, the nighttime falls aside as anybody scatters into the dark. Meanwhile, anybody become jogging for his or her lives due to the fact the monster hunters had released a brutal assault at the vampires. So, silver spears have been flying everywhere, and lots of vampires have been already dead, at the same time as our bodies stored falling one after another, turning the battlefield right into a nightmare. In the center of this mess, Margot and her husband Sebastian have been badly wounded due to the fact Calliope's mother and father had attacked them. But considering the fact that they have been legacy vampires, that they'd more potent powers. So, after a few time, Margot controlled to stand up and attempted to assist Sebastian rise, too. Meanwhile, Calliope's own circle of relatives found out that the state of affairs become out of manipulate and understood that those vampires have been now no longer going to die easily, so that they had to retreat fast. While on the equal time, the prepared dinner who had attacked Calliope reached the residence once more and attempted to kidnap her. He blanketed her mouth and dragged her away. But Juliet sensed something become incorrect and that Calliope become in danger. So, she returned at once and reached simply in time. Together, they fought the prepared dinner till he become ultimately beaten. And they notion he become dead. But now a brand new hassle regarded due to the fact that they'd no concept what to do with the frame and Kali become nonetheless shaking in fear. Meanwhile, Eleanor and Oliver arrived and killed the mother and father of Calliope's friend. While quickly after, Apollo captured Oliver and dragged him domestic wherein he become chained with silver. But even after heavy torture, Oliver saved healing, which made all people livid due to the fact not anything appeared to kill legacy vampires. At the identical time, the vampire celebration changed into becoming panic, however Juliet's grandmother attempted to calm all people. Juliet and Calliope then went to Ben for assist due to the fact he changed into the most effective one she trusted. And whilst Ben opened the automobile trunk, he determined not anything at first, so he concept they had been joking. But suddenly, the prepared dinner regarded alive once more and attacked, that's whilst Juliet lost managed and made her first kill through the use of her claws to pierce his throat and drink all his blood at the same time as Ben watched in horror. For Calliope, this changed into normal, however for Ben, it shattered the entirety he believed. Meanwhile, Sebastian saved getting worse, and Margot attempted the entirety to keep him at the same time as worry changed into spreading everywhere. Eleanor rushed to her grandmother and begged her to keep her father due to the fact Sebastian changed into slightly alive. But the grandmother insisted on leaving due to the fact she knew if she stayed, a person might pressure her to assist. Eleanor presented a large sacrifice through agreeing to marry into the effective vampire bloodline her grandmother had usually wanted. And finally, the grandmother agreed, letting her keep her father. Soon, Juliet, Calliope and Ben had been dragging the frame into the woods, looking to bury it quietly, at the same time as Ben saved suggesting hints from crime shows, and the ladies struggled with the weight. At the identical time, Sebastian changed into weakening fast, and Margot saved asking him to drink her blood so he should live to tell the tale a bit longer. Eventually, the grandmother arrived with the serpent parent and informed everybody to depart, even as freeing it onto Sebastian, who fairly absorbed it into his wound, surprising everybody. Meanwhile, Juliet and the others nearly were given stuck hiding the frame due to the fact a few classmates seen suddenly. So, they speedy lied, pronouncing they have been mourning a pal to keep away from suspicion. While Apollo and Theo persisted torturing Oliver, who nevertheless claimed he did now no longer realize in which Calliope turned into. Both households then determined to fulfill due to the fact the war had grown too big. And that they had to locate their daughters. Back on the party, Juliet and Calliope mentioned Juliet's first kill and found out that they'd stored every different no matter being enemies. While Calliope understood that for the reason that bite, their minds have been linked and they might even meet in goals. Just whilst feelings rose, Sebastian seemed completely healed and compelled everybody to move domestic. But something felt incorrect due to the fact his eyes appeared peculiar and venomous. While driving, a terrifying female seemed in the front of the car, inflicting Kali to run. And Juliet to observe as Olive resides in disorder. Juliet and Calliope have been going for walks as rapid as they might in the direction of their faculty due to the fact they wanted a secure region to hide. Yet, all of the doorways have been locked in order that they couldn't get in anywhere. And of course, going domestic turned into now no longer in choice due to the fact chaos had already taken over there in order that they had nowhere to turn. But then Juliet collected all her braveness and smashed a pitcher to open a door. So they slipped inside, modified into their sports activities clothes, and began out talking. Even as looking to discern out in which Juliet's new strength turned into coming from. And she informed Kali that she did now no longer clearly realize calls from domestic telling her to return back. So they each knew that they could subsequently should face their families. But for now, they determined to live collectively and spend the day at faculty, understanding their mother and father won't agree. And they referred to as their mothers, who have been upset, however subsequently typical that Juliet and Kali have been collectively. Despite the fact that one become a vampire and the opposite a vampire hunter and the ladies promised to be careful. Meanwhile, Ella Laner become getting prepared at domestic in stunning garments guided through her grandmother who taught her a way to behave and talk in the vampire-owned circle of relatives. Yet, Eleanor Best agreed to the wedding to store her father and benefit power. And Margot arrived to give an explanation for what Eleanor must do. But Eleanor calmed everybody down and took control, ensuring all choices have been hers and promising to keep the own circle of relatives as legacy. And he or she organized to be the following keeper to preserve the best rank with inside the vampire hierarchy even as everybody swore to guard the own circle of relatives and its destiny so errors could now no longer happen. Back at faculty, Ben and Nova argued due to the fact Ben desired honesty even as Nova refused to choose. And in the course of their fight, a photograph clicked on Ben's telecell smartphone, which were given dispatch to Juliet and Calliope. And whilst she noticed it, an alarm went off like a monster warning, and he or she confirmed it to Calliope, who right away found out a monster had entered the faculty with risky eyes. And meanwhile, Eleanor and her grandmother handled journeying vampires looking to declare power, even as Margot met her ex-fiancé and forgave. Beyond regrets. And Eleanor monitored her father's fitness even as wonderful a boy from every other extended family politely. Juliet and Calliope found the monster roaming the school. So, Calliope broke glass to say's monster, however were given scratched, making Juliet panic due to the fact she couldn't manipulate herself seeing Calliope's blood. Yet, Calliope calmed her, announcing she could now no longer get harm. Eleanor ran to her father, Sebastian, to forestall her marriage, however her grandmother slapped him and reminded him he had no proper to interfere, stunning him as he began out reworking right into a monster with inexperienced eyes. And meanwhile, Juliet and Kali carried a monster's frame that began out turning to ashes. But Juliet misplaced manipulate seeing Calliope's blood, and Calliope grabbed a tree department to forestall her, reminding her of her promise now no longer to damage her and instructed her to calm down. Then Margot arrived to get her daughter and found Sebastian had killed her mom, a effective vampire. Yet she found out her mom had an excessive amount of manipulate, and he or she instructed Eleanor to claim the wedding could now no longer happen, which made Ella Laner glad to end up the Destiny Keeper. While Margot calmed her husband, know how his drastic adjustments have been for the family. Finally, Juliet and Calliope confronted a new danger as Oliver seemed with a monster female from the celebration desiring a ritual the use of human blood. But Juliet stopped her from harming Calliope, explaining the monster could now no longer harm her and requested Calliope to step again for safety, leaving Juliet on my own to stand her brother, monster girlfriend. Talia turned into taking her daughter Calliope to high school even as scolding her, telling her to live quiet and now no longer communicate to every person so they may go away Juliet's interest fast due to the fact quickly they would depart the town and the news had already unfolded that a pupil had been killed on the faculty when you consider that with inside the final episode, Nova changed into brutally killed with the aid of using a monster and Juliet and Calliope have been stuck on camera. So now the police have cooperation and no person changed into being arrested. And each women have been visible taking place the steps whilst everybody else stayed in her and there has been no photos from the region wherein Nova died. So Margot warned that her husband changed into the DA and will get them eliminated from their positions, which made Juliet give an explanation for that. She had heard Nova's screams and ran to help, however it changed into too late. While Calliope firmly stated she had now no longer visible whatever due to the fact her mom instructed her to live quiet, but outside, Calliope wondered if human beings could suspect them, and her mom instructed her now no longer to fear due to the fact they would go away the town soon. And then Nova's lady friend changed into interviewed crying that she ought to have stored him. Meanwhile, Juliet walked beforehand with Calliope following. And 11 though their moms desired them apart, they stayed connected, which Margot and Talia discussed, understanding it'd be difficult to split them. So, they determined to fulfill their households in Margot's workplace and reminded every different to depart weapons behind. Then, the point of interest shifted to Theo and Apollo, looking information that everyone the town moms had accrued to seek monsters, which involved Apollo. However, Theo cared greater approximately the lacking cook. Then Talia arrived angry, explaining how Calliope were given concerned with inside the faculty homicide case due to her reference to Juliet. And she insisted on appearing her own circle of relatives separation method, which changed into important to get rid of the venom in her Calliope from being bitten with the aid of using a legacy vampire like Juliet. And Theo could bring it out correctly with the aid of using giving Calliope a drink to make her unconscious, then the use of a silver liquid enchanting to do away with the venom and create antibodies with Callie scared however trusting. While Theo remembered and assumed got here from her sister. But Eleanor arrived explaining it have to be their mom and it changed into the college holiday. Today changed into a terrific day due to the fact day after today anybody could awaken overdue and Juliet did now no longer experience like going to the celebration. But Eleanor insisted she had to analyze lots, reminding her she changed into a legacy vampire and a mark. So many stuff have been nevertheless new and vital and Eleanor promised to train her. Meanwhile, Xania changed into now no longer feeling nicely and Apollo attempted to enroll in a town organization for all of the moms in opposition to monsters to accumulate information, however he couldn't input on my own. So Callie changed into dispatch to get ice cream and helped him with a password, which changed into virtually the call of a drink because it changed into Ban's mom's organization. And she or he already knew the whole lot making Apollo happy. Elsewhere, Ban met his mom and Xania centered on Ban seeking to recognize what his mom changed into doing and he defined now no longer all monsters have been terrible and a few lived peacefully with human beings and Bunny advised him he changed into nevertheless younger and had now no longer confronted monsters but however the group could defend anybody. Then Juliet and Eleanor arrived on the celebration and Eleanor made Juliet drink lots to lighten up and shortly Juliet began out dancing taking part in herself and Ella Laner mentioned a bachelor who had been left on my own and advised having a few a laugh with him. So Juliet accompanied Ella Laner's lead and that they lured the boy consuming his blood till he died. And Juliet changed into bold over due to the fact she had now no longer intended to kill. But Eleanor reminded her this changed into their responsibility as vampires and a part of the legacy. Then they disposed of the frame and water and stored the boy's ID to music records and Juliet cried, however Eleanor reassured, who had been on the celebration that night time or had been there after they first raided and all and sundry gave distinctive statements noticing extraordinary things, however nobody clearly knew who to suspect. Nova's lady friend stated she turned into now no longer on the celebration and couldn't consider who invited anyone. And one boy noticed Juliet and Callie collectively, which made suspicion fall on them, too. While Ben stammered at first, however replied confidently, so nobody pressed him further. Then Colette got here ahead complaining that everybody always suspected her. And the police showed the blood internal cook's frame turned into absolutely drained. That means it turned into probable a monster. Outside, all of the dad and mom gathered, shouting they might now no longer allow their kids take a look at on the college and annoying all college students be removed. And counselors attempted to calm them down, pronouncing the monsters might be located soon, however the dad and mom had been furious, wondering the police had been now no longer doing enough. Juliet felt involved due to the fact Ben's mom led absolutely each person and influenced them repeatedly. Yet Juliet turned into now no longer wondered due to the fact she turned into the DA's daughter. Juliet and Caleb talked quietly, knowing a person should have killed Cook, and shortly absolutely each person understood a vampire turned into at the back of it. And Callip insisted Juliet have to move domestic, in which her own circle of relatives should shield her. But Juliet laughed, pronouncing her own circle of relatives had been monster hunters and might assault her immediately. Calliope reassured her that her own circle of relatives might now no longer damage her and that they had to accept as true with every other. At domestic, Apollo added Theo to a mystery chamber. Most effective dad and mom should unlock, however Theo knew the lock, too, and that they referred to as a hacker to hint erased recall. With natural silver, which burned Juliet badly, despite the fact that she changed into a legacy vampire. To keep away from suspicion, Calliope Speedy drove forward, telling the officer they had been simply losing Juliet off, and the officer agreed, however observed besides due to the fact neither female desired to move home. Meanwhile, Talia sat Theo and Apollo down asking their plans. And Theo subsequently unfolded approximately being followed and the way his mom changed into killed with the aid of using a vampire. And Talia comforted him, telling him he ought to constantly speak to her and explaining the hazard to the family. If he did now no longer take care of matters cautiously earlier than leaving with Apollo. Outside, Theo and Apollo waited close to a membership with Apollo insisting on managing the assembly alone. And inside, anxiety rose while Eleanor were given indignant at them for seeking to query her, main to a combat in which a silver dagger nearly hit her. However, she averted it and erased everyone's memory. Apollo had misplaced all his memory, so he had no clue what occurred to Theo and Calliope iced up in surprise earlier than fainting due to the fact he couldn't give an explanation for anything. Both of them had been crying tough and did now no longer apprehend how Theo may be lifeless whilst their palms had been included in blood. So, Juliet instructed them they needed to go away earlier than matters were given worse. Callie and Apollo washed their palms, and Juliet wiped clean all of the blood and any proof that Calliope ought to touch, ensuring not anything changed into left behind. Then Juliet observed a lipstick at the ground and diagnosed it belonged to her sister Ella Laner. So she stored it, however all at once heard a heartbeat. Since vampires can pay attention the faintest sounds,